Hello everyone. So again, for the sake of copyright, I will be showing gameplay instead of showing clips from the show so I don't have any risk of getting a strike. Please like and subscribe or support me on Patreon. I would love to do this full time if possible. Also, before I get into it, this is a spoiler warning as I will be talking about a lot of different moments in the show. If you don't want to get spoiled, I have a timestamp that just shares my final thoughts and gives my rating of the show. If you want, you can skip to that part, listed in the description. So I watched Witch Watch, and it was a fun time. The show is a small, sort of episodic, cutesy type show starring a witch and Oni and company. This comedic show was a sort of fun watch, but it has its ups and downs, which I will be discussing in this video. First of all, the premise of the show was interesting. It is about a witch, Nico, in modern day Japan who needs a bodyguard, so her childhood friend, Morihito, who is an Oni, takes on the task of being her bodyguard. They are joined by a Tengu, a werewolf, and a vampire eventually. They go on small, wacky, self contained adventures for the most part. There's a sort of an overarching plot about like Nico being the thousand-year witch or something, which is like the most powerful witch to come out in like 1,000 years or something like that. But for the most part, that issue is not really relevant in the stories. I mean, it sort of is, but I'll get to that later. I think the comedy is just okay. It did get me to chuckle every now and then, but the comedy usually comes from Nico misusing some magic, and then they have to like try and get themselves out of their sticky situation. Like when Nico turns them all into 2D drawings, just like my horny fantasies. My favorite of these short stories is when Kanshi gets lazy at his job and asks Nico to speed up time for him. This leads to a very funny story about Kanshi realizing that his perception of time just got slower and he's moving too fast for anyone to understand him. So he has to learn to cope with his situation and like learns to talk super slow and stuff so he can talk to his friends. It's a short but comedic situation with magic that works very well and is a good example of when things are working for the anime. This leads to some funny moments, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the situations they get into aren't that funny and they're just kind of boring. Like with Nico and Kanchi's YouTube channel, those ones are kind of boring to me. And that leads to my next complaint. Some of the stories in the anime are just not that interesting. Take for example, every single story about the student teacher duo that are like really into this manga that is in the show. They are into this fictional manga and all of their stories are like really boring, every single one. And some of the episodes about them last for so long because they do like a thing where they go into like the anime adaptation of the manga and it gets like super annoying. Maybe because the action scenes they do for it are not that great, really basic movement and camera work, but I think the main reason is the story. It's just not that interesting. And it's not just the otaku duo. The stories for some of them are just so boring. Like when Nico and Morihito shrink down to try and eat a donut, it's just not that interesting. They get into some weird hijinks and then like stuff happens and then like the magic just runs out and that's how they solve their issue. Like it's just not that interesting again. I also think that the plot points regarding Nico being the thousand-year witch are not that interesting either, even though they are supposed to be the highlights of the anime. I guess when the warlocks get involved, it is sort of interesting, but still not really. Maybe because the threats that the warlocks or that they should be facing end up being like not that serious. The warlocks are not really threatening, to be honest. They feel like props rather than good antagonists, and things just get kind of boring. All in all, though, the anime was still somewhat fun to watch. It's definitely not a mediocre show, but I would give it a 6 out of 10.